Buenas, buenas. ¿Qué tal? Como eso. poco esto. Bueno, vamos a ver la parte de async y await. Organizamos y bien. Darlo ahí el micro. Bajarlo un chiquitín. Bien, lo dejo ahí. Ok.
Hi there. Earlier, we learned about promises, one way of handling asynchronous code. Promises are objects that may or may not produce a value at some point in the future. If you did the reading, you learned about a then method, which takes callbacks to return a response. Let's look at an example to refresh your memory. We're going to generate a number between 1 and 10. We want the user to try to guess if it's less than 5 or greater than 5. So first, we're creating a new promise. with resolve and reject callback functions passed in. We'll generate a random number between 1 and 10. We're going to create a conditional.
Can I watch this online?
If our number is less than 5, we're going to use the resolve callback with the following message. Or else, the promise will be rejected with the following message. Now we'll define the resolve and reject functions. We'll create one function called handle success, and we'll pass in a parameter of good news. All we're going to do here is console log the good news. So this is going to be our resolve function. We also need a reject function. We'll call this handle failure and pass in bad news as the parameter. Console log the bad news. All right, now we need to invoke this promise, passing in the functions we just defined. I want to challenge you to do this. You're going to invoke the promise and then pass in our resolve and reject functions. Pause the screencast now and work on this challenge. We'll walk through it together when you come back. All right, hopefully that went well. So we want to invoke the promise. So we'll call my promise. It's the keyword then. We want to chain then to a promise. And then we're passing in our resolve and reject functions. In this case, handle success and handle failure are our callback functions. I'm going to run this, and we've guessed correctly. Let's console log a number as well so we can see what's happening. So we'll run again. 2 is less than 5. We've guessed correctly. If I run it again, this time it's 8, and we get the bad news. All right. Now let's look at a different way of handling asynchronous functions. We are going to learn a couple of keywords, but they're pretty intuitive. The async keyword tells the JavaScript engine we're declaring an asynchronous function. When a function is declared with async, it automatically returns a promise. When a value is returned from the function, that's the same as resolving a promise. If we throw an error, this means the promise was rejected. Async functions are what is referred to as syntactical sugar for promises. Sounds pretty sweet. So the async keyword can be used anywhere you would use a normal function. But functions can be created in different ways, right? I'm going to show you one way to rewrite the function from the previous example with async. I'm going to create a variable called random response. I'll set this equal to an asynchronous callback function. I want to have a variable called message. I want to generate a random number like before, and now I'm going to put my conditional inside this function. But this time, I'm going to give a value to the variable we declared before. I'm using the await keyword and then defining the message. Then I'm going to log the message to the console. I'm doing the same thing in the else block of our function. Now if I call random response, if we run this, our number must have been under 5. If we run it again, this time our number was over 5. All right, is there a different way we could write this function? This is a challenge for you. I want you to see if you can write this function in a slightly different way. Just a hint, the body of our function is not going to change. Pause the screencast and take a moment to do that now. Okay, one other way that we could write this message is to take async and put it at the beginning, and then we will name our function random response. So instead of an arrow function, we're declaring an async function called random response. And when I run this, it works just the same. Awesome. Let's consider a different example. This time we have an array of fruits. We have banana, strawberry, and papaya. We want to use a for each loop to return something asynchronously from this array. We're going to take our array, and for each item in the array, we're going to do something asynchronously. We'll use an arrow function and run the following code. We'll define a message. We're using a string, and we're concatenating our array item inside this message. Then we're going to log this message to the console. So let's run this. When we open the console, we see that we've logged the question 3 times for each item in our array. Sweet. We might also be returning data from a server and manipulating that inside of an asynchronous function. But the keyword async has a buddy, await. This friendly fellow tells JavaScript to wait for an asynchronous action to finish before continuing the function. This is similar to using then, except we'll assign a variable to the result using await. We can use that result elsewhere. Remember the Giphy API practice project from the earlier lesson? Here's a refresh. Take a look at this code and hit the run button. So our fetch statement returns a promise. If it is resolved, then we'll return that response. Then we'll use another function to set our image's source attribute. So let's run this. Cute. I just love cats, don't you? But how can we rewrite this with async await? Let's do this in phases. We can have async without await, but we can't have await without async. So where do we want to put the keyword async? Pause the screencast and add that keyword where you believe it would go. When you get back, we'll go through that together.
Acá, sync.
All right, hopefully you remembered that we'll put async right before our function keyword. Let's run our code again. Everything is running just as before. Now we can refactor to use await instead of our promise blocks with the then method. This time, we're going to create a variable called response. We're going to set that equal to our API call. And here's where we want to use the await keyword. We still need to use the JSON method. Then we'll return a promise that will set our image's source attribute. So we'll run this again, and we've got some more cute kitties. But we want to remove this other then block. Can you use this example to refactor the second part of our function? I know this may still seem a little abstract, but give it a try and then we'll walk through it together. Pause the screencast and do that now. Okay, so we want to create another variable for our result. We'll call it cat data. We need to apply the JSON method, which returns a promise. So we'll use await to assign the response to cat data. Then we'll set our image source to this index within our cat data. All right, now what's left to do? Just call our function. Awesome. The code behaves as it did in the previous lesson. This is just another way that you'll see asynchronous code written, especially when making calls to APIs. Let's look at a couple of ways to handle errors with asynchronous functions. With promises, we have the catch method. Let's look at our example from the beginning. We can take our promise, and if it returns a value, then we'll handle success. If the promise is rejected, we're going to catch the error with handle failure. So let's run this. All right, so instead of passing in resolve and reject parameters, we can chain promises with then and catch. Then handles success, catch handles failure. If we have larger blocks of code, like we have in our asynchronous function with the cat API call, we can use a try catch block. So we'll have a try block first, and if our promise is returned successfully, we're going to run that code. Otherwise, we can catch the error. We might want to console log the error. Another thing we could do is set our image source attribute to something different. Just set it to our logo like we had before. All right, so let's run this code and see what happens. And our API call was successful. But what if I had a typo in my fetch call? When I run this code, we would get an error in the console, but we would still have an image appear in the mini browser. Very cool. Async and await are great tools to write clean asynchronous code. I hope this lesson has been helpful. Feel free to watch again and pause at any time to play with the code. Good luck and happy coding.
Cool, cool. Bueno, Bueno, esto es queda completado. Me faltan los artículos. Em, bueno, ya refactoricé el código gracias a ChatGPT y nada, me queda leer esto. Voy a dejar para mañana para leer eso y seguir continuando. Así que bueno, nos vemos mañana a la mañana si Dios quiere. Saludos.